27 people stood up and became Christ followers during our Easter celebration this year at Crosspoint Church. My concern after the fact is that they bravely stood up, but they were nervously thinking, this is going to be really hard, but I'm going to give it a shot. The reason so many people think being a Christian is hard, that it's an impossible way to live in our culture today, is because sometimes we have people represent the Christian church that I really wish they didn't. You know what I'm saying? I really wish that they weren't so loud and that they would just settle down and be a little quieter. And because I think it distorts the message of the gospel sometimes if you have the wrong people repping the gospel out there and they don't do it the way that it was intended. I want to show you a few things that I think kind of rub people, especially we're okay with this because we're Christian folk and we're used to it, and it's kind of the verbiage that we have always used in the church, but sometimes the things that we're accustomed to can push people away that are thinking about faith, or they're asking big questions, and if we're not careful how we represent, we can push somebody away that was once leaning in, and we don't want to be guilty of that at Crosspoint. So let me throw a few of these up. These are things that are floating out there in the social media world, and the only thing I ask about these is please don't tag me in these. Okay? Here's the first one. Think it's hot here? Turn or burn. Turn or burn. Go to the next one. Churches that preach what people want to hear, and then there's a picture of Free Chapel Church, Jensen Franklin's church up top, versus churches that preach the truth. So the indication is if you fill a church up, you're just telling them what they want to hear, but if you tell them the truth, nobody's going to come to hear that. Okay? Go to the next one. We need preachers who preach that hell is hot, and then it goes on and on, okay? Now, that's verbiage that we're used to, and it doesn't bother us because we lean into that, we understand. But, there's some conversations that my family and I have that are very private, that they're not for your ears. They're just for our family. And I wouldn't want you to sit in on some of those conversations because it might change the way you think about us, because we have real problems too. I mean, I'm living with some messed up people. Kind of, sort of. No. Anyway, I think there's some conversations and some marketing that church folks ought to think about a little bit longer before they put it out there, because it's not just other believers that are used to that are going to see it. There are Christians that are either going to lean in or they're going to push away. So always ask yourself, will this cause unbelievers, unchurched people, people that are far from God, will this cause them to lean in or push away from the faith? And if you think it's going to cause them to push away, you can't just have the attitude, well, if they can't handle the truth. No, because someday we're going to stand before God and we're going to give an account for how we represent the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Jesus had a method. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I believe that this is so important. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm preaching a series called Simple Faith. In other words, sometimes we make it difficult. The title of today's sermon is Don't Make This Difficult. To those of you who have been believers for a while, if you've started to feel that your faith has become a burden instead of a blessing, your faith has become, very regimented, and you've drifted back to your old way of thinking that says, what's the use? I just can't do this anymore. Too much pressure to maintain a Christian lifestyle. The next 2 weeks are for you. Okay, this is going to help you a lot. New Jesus followers who feel overwhelmed with all the theology and the Bible stuff, even people who are not Christians because you just think, well, I could never do what they're asking and requiring of me to do. I want to try to simplify this for you today so you have a clear understanding of Jesus' indication of what Christ followers ought to be thinking and how they ought to be leaning into faith. And even graduating seniors, there's a lot of them in the room today. I think Micah told me and Josh somewhere between 23 and 27 that attend Crosspoint. All of them didn't turn pictures in that are graduating this year. But graduating seniors who are about to go into the next season of life and you're going off to college, you don't have to put your faith away. You don't have to put it in a box and put it in storage for the next 4 years. You just don't have to do that just because you think it's not going to work for you on a college campus. You couldn't be more wrong about that. Give me a chance for 2 weeks to explain that to you. So today and next Sunday, we're going to fix that kind of broken thinking about God, because your faith matters. It just absolutely matters. And again, if you're a senior or you're a non-believer or you're a Christian that's a bit burdened, I want you to get the overwhelming theme of what I'm trying to get across today, and it's this: you can do this. You can do this. This is not some impossible thing that you go, wow, I just can't do it. You may not can do the version that traditional church is putting out there with all the demands and the rules and the regulations, but that's not what Jesus brought across. So let's take a closer look and see what Jesus had to say about it, and I think that it's going to help us a whole lot. Now, a lot of churches preach a very destructive, blatantly wrong message today that says church is for church people, super spiritual people already connected to God. And if you're not super spiritual, then the church doesn't really have a place or anything for you. But the study of the life of Jesus in the Scriptures, when you do that, you get a completely different perspective and a different picture of what's really going on here. People, I say this all the time, and I'm going to repeat this over and over for the next couple of weeks, but people who were nothing like Jesus liked Jesus, and Jesus liked the people who were nothing like him. Jesus came to show common, everyday people, sinners, how they could connect with God. And that was unheard of 2,000 years ago, because only the super spiritual religious leaders were thought to be connected with God. So when Jesus came, he interrupted a religious system that said that God could not be experienced by anybody except super spiritual elitist people, you know. In fact, the reason Jesus came was to show us how people could personally connect with God, not through a person, not through a religious system, not through a church, but they could personally relate to God one-on-one. Now, congratulations, because by the time I got to this point in my sermon the last time, 2 families had already got up and walked out. Y'all are still here. So we're doing good. This was a brand new concept to the people Jesus preached to. I'm afraid there's a lot of preachers, churches, and Christians that believe the church is for super spiritual people who know what, religious terms like transubstantiation means. And they know the difference, in a pre-tribulation, a mid-tribulation, and a post-tribulation rapture. Anyone? Infidels. You don't know this stuff, really? Jesus said all of this religious rhetoric is keeping common people from leaning into faith and connecting with God. He said, you've got it all wrong. You're presenting this the wrong way. God connections aren't only for super spiritual people. God wants to connect with sinners. Jesus said, I've come to introduce you to simple faith. Quit complicating this. Don't make this difficult. Today I want to tell you a story about Matthew. Now, I talk about Matthew a whole lot because his story identifies with Crosspoint Church and who we are and why we do church the way that we do. And I talk about Matthew a lot, but in fact, it's all about Matthew today and his first interaction with Jesus Christ. Now, this is so important. And again, if you're here today and you would consider yourself like a really bad person, you need to listen up, because Matthew was a really bad person, and he knew it. He knew he was a bad person. If you're, feeling a bit disconnected from God because of your past or as a lack of, because of a lack of belief, whatever that might be, you too need to listen, because that's who Matthew was. If you're a person who thinks that the only way to connect with God is through religious rituals or routines of the church and a system of do's and don'ts and thou shalt and thou shalt nots, you need to lean in and listen today. So let's jump right into the story, and then we'll kind of unpack it as we go. Matthew chapter 9, verse 9 says this: As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Stop right there. Let's talk about the tax collectors, because that's what makes this story so intriguing to us today. Matthew was a Jew who had, in the eyes of other Jews, become a traitor because he worked for the enemy. He worked for Rome, collecting taxes from other Jews, often unfair and ridiculous taxes. Now, I know that in our culture and in this country, we know absolutely nothing about ridiculous taxes, so you may not be able to identify with this. But try to lean in and see if it makes sense. On top of these unfair taxes, the Roman tax collector that Matthew worked for was allowed to add a surcharge to already ridiculous taxes so that he could make as much money as he wanted. And then he gave Matthew room to do the same thing. It was an unfair oppression at the highest potential level. So Matthew worked for a corrupt tax collector, and he enforced unfair oppression on his own people, and Matthew was hated and he was despised. Tax collectors were so bad, they didn't even get lumped in with sinners. They had their own classification. They were their own demographic of people. There were sinners in that culture. Then there were tax collectors. You could be a prostitute, you could cheat on your wife, you could be a thief, the worst of the worst, and you got to be called a sinner. But if you were a tax collector, you were a tax collector. It was bad. That's who Matthew was. He was the scum of the earth, tax collector. He knew he was bad. His family knew he was bad. They had disowned him. Everybody knew he was bad. He was enriching himself through the power of Rome at the expense of his own people. So Jesus spots Matthew. He walks up to him, no doubt, with his disciples kind of tailing along closely behind him. And here's what Jesus said to Matthew. He looks at him right in the eye and he says, "Follow me. Follow me." Now, Peter's in the back, and he hears Jesus say this, and he's like, what'd Jesus say? What'd he say? He elbows his way to the front, and he says, "Wait a minute, Jesus, what'd you say to this guy?" And Jesus goes, "I just invited Matthew to join us." Can you imagine the commotion from these Jewish disciples of Jesus that had been railroaded by Matthew for years and years and years? I mean, John steps up, and he says, No, Jesus, I think you've messed this one up. Don't ruin our group before we ever get started. You're assembling a great group of guys here. We don't want this guy. Why not just preach him a sermon, tell him everything he's done wrong, give him a list of things that he needs to do and a list of things that he needs to quit doing, and we'll come back in a year and check on his progress, and if he's kind of up to speed, we may let him carry our bags for us. But we don't want him in our group. I mean, he's going to mess everything up. People know who he is. He's a tax collector. We don't need him. Jesus ignores his grumbling disciples. He looks at Matthew and he says, "Here's what I'd like you to do, Matthew. You don't need a pen. You don't have to even write this stuff down because I'm going to keep this simple," Jesus would say. It won't require anything on your part, Matthew. For right now, here's what I want you to do. He said, "I want you to push your chair back, stand up, and follow me." I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm not asking you to stop doing anything. I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm not asking you to leave anything. I'm just saying, Matthew, would you do one thing that I know you can do? Would you slide your chair back, stand up, and follow me? Will you make that decision today, Matthew, to follow me? But Jesus, it blew their minds. This is how it always begins with Jesus. This is the initial invitation that Jesus extends to every single one of us every single day of our lives. Jesus could have said, "Matthew, here's what you've done in the past. Here's what you're doing right now. This is why you're no good, and this is why you can't be a part of my team." He could have unloaded on Matthew. There's plenty to unload on him for. But Jesus didn't come to this earth to do things like that. He didn't look at Matthew and say, "Turn or burn, repent or perish." He didn't say, "You think it's hot here? It's really going to be hot. Where are you going, boy? I'm just telling you." He didn't do any of that, okay? It was a different approach from what we're seeing in traditional church environments today. Jesus basically said, "Hey, just stand up and follow me, and let's see what happens once you become a part of this journey." He didn't come to the earth to push people away. He came to pull them in. He came to this earth to be followed because when people follow him, it gives him the opportunity to show them how to connect with God. Jesus could have buried Matthew. He could have buried him with guilt and shame. But instead, he said, "Matthew, one simple thing today, just follow me." Listen to me, folks. No matter what your church experience has been like, and no matter what you've thought about God and what you've done in the past, regardless of your baggage, how many marriages that have failed, your kids, how rebellious they may or may not be. The last time you talked to your parents, maybe it was a bad ending. That last conversation that you had with your ex-wife, that big fight that you had over the kids, what you've done financially, some of those bad choices. Here's what we know through this simple exchange of Jesus Christ. Every single day, there is an invitation from Jesus to take one simple, single step in his direction and just follow him. But Pastor, you have no idea what I've got lurking in the shadows of my life. I don't give a holy hoot what you've got lurking in the shadows of your life. You're probably, especially in this church, you're probably sitting by someone that if you shared stories, theirs is worse than yours. I know this crowd. I've bailed this crowd out of jail more than a few times, okay? We know how this works, okay? But I'm not ashamed of that. I'm proud of that. That this is the people that are leaning into faith and growing and that decided, I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm going to follow Jesus. We were all sinners at one time, right? We were all sinners and we continue to sin and we're still trying to get it right. You don't know the half of it, but listen to what happens next because this is so incredibly amazing. Verse 9, he said, Matthew got up and followed him. So think about this. I want to take this a little bit further. Where did Jesus ask Matthew to follow him to? Where do you think that Jesus would have asked Matthew to go with him? Peter and John would have answered that, and, Jesus would have looked at them and said, where do y'all want to go? They would have said, well, Jesus, let's take Matthew first out to the woodshed, and let's teach him a lesson. We need to straighten this boy out. We need to convince him that he needs to be repentant of all this tax collecting and cheating that he's done of people. All these bad things. This guy's got to be straightened out if he's going to be a part of our group. If he's going to join our group, he needs to get this right. So where would you guess, though, that Jesus was going to take Matthew after he said, follow me? Here's what's so amazing. Verse 10. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. At Matthew's house. Wait a minute. Do you mean to tell me that Jesus looked at Matthew and said, hey, let's go to your place? Give me a break. That looks like Jesus was following Matthew instead of Matthew following Jesus. In fact, Luke in his book tells us that Matthew threw a party for Jesus and his disciples. Guess who Matthew invited to the party? The same people that you invite to your parties, the ones that showed up last time, right? The ones that had a great time because, they can't remember half of the party. So they think it must have been a good one. I don't even remember half of it. So that's who Matthew, he invited his friends. His friends wasn't his family. They had disowned him. His friends wasn't his Jewish brothers and sisters or cousins or aunts or uncles or Jewish friends that he grew up with. They had pushed away from him. He invited tax collectors and sinners to this party. So Matthew throws the party. He invites all of his friends to celebrate the fact that he had met Jesus, this great teacher. And can you believe this? Jesus went to his house. And he said to Matthew, follow me. Okay, Jesus, where are we going? Let's go to your place. And the disciples are going, wait a minute, Jesus, we can't go there. We can't go to this guy's house. We have reputations to uphold. This is all wrong. This guy's a tax collector. His tax collector cooties are going to get all over us. His despicable, ridiculous, unfair lifestyle is going to tarnish our good name. We can't go to his place. But Jesus says we're going to Matthew's house, and not only are we going to visit, we're going to have a dinner and a party there. Now, just pause it again because it seems weird to you to hear a story like this. And I would say if it seems kind of out of context, perhaps it's because you don't really know Jesus, what he's actually like. You've been presented with a distorted perspective of Jesus by modern Christianity today that's hellfire and brimstone. Punish them all right up front and tell them turn or burn, repent or perish. You think it's hot here kind of thing. Because that's what's going on in our culture today, and it's what's keeping unbelievers, people who are far from God, from getting closer and leaning into faith. And so, that's why that you're thinking it's just too hard. And that's why unbelievers are thinking it's just too hard to live that kind of lifestyle. I don't want to live that kind of life because we presented a distorted view of what Christianity is actually all about. And the idea of Jesus saying to you, let's just keep this simple. Follow me. I'm not even going to tell you what to do. I'm not even going to ask you to change anything right now, but just follow me. Hey, let's just go somewhere you're comfortable, in fact. You don't have to come to my place. I'll go to your place so I can help you ultimately, eventually connect with God. Now, if this is totally a new concept to you, perhaps it's because you've been presented with a distorted perspective of what Jesus is really like. Perhaps you've never heard the real story. Perhaps you're like so many people that have been confused by preachers and Christian folk who would say, God is out to get you kind of thing. The truth is, if you're nothing like Jesus, if you're in the room today and you're just kind of leaning in, checking this out, if you're nothing like Jesus, Jesus would probably hang out with you over me if he were in the world today. He'd pick you. He would want to go to your house. He'd want to hang out with you. He would lean in your direction, and every day of your life, he would extend this invitation to you. Hey, come on, follow me. And the first place we'll go is some place that's comfortable for you. You don't have to come to my place. I'm willing to go to yours, Jesus would say. Can I drop a truth bomb on you? And if you're not already feeling a little squeezed, this is going to squeeze you a little bit. This is why we do what we do here at Crosspoint Church. We go out of our way to create an environment that's comfortable for unchurched people. And look, we take a lot of heat for it. When we say everybody that drives under our cross and walks through our doors is welcome at Crosspoint, it's not just a nice slogan. When we say you can belong before you believe, it's not just a catchphrase that, we just thought it might be cute to put on a sign. We mean it, and we take a lot of heat for it. They'll take anybody over there at that church, darn right. We'll let anybody come and explore faith in Jesus Christ, and we're going to make them feel welcome when they get here. We don't just say everybody's welcome. It's one thing to say everybody's welcome or everybody's wanted and then not make them feel welcome when they get here. We're going to do our best to make them feel welcome. Are you ready for that? Amen. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. The disciples are saying we can't do this, but Jesus said, yes, we can. We want to create a disarmament environment, and we don't care if that rubs super spiritual, religious elitists the wrong way. We want them to come to Jesus too, in fact. We want them to have an opportunity to lean in and explore a right version of faith that we believe is what God has called all believers to experience. People don't like hearing me say it, but we're going to poke the old religious bear every chance that we get. We're going to say, don't be so uptight. Don't be so tense. Don't be so protective of your traditional beliefs. Look, I'm not trying to change who you are or your morals or your values, but I do want you to have a clear picture of who Jesus is and what he actually is all about. And then my challenge to you is to lean into that. Don't do it my way. Do it Jesus' way. That's the most important thing. We're very strategic about helping sinners connect with God and not allowing that holier-than-thou attitude to corrupt this environment. So yeah, it's church, but it's going to be a different kind of church from what you thought it was going to be. The Pharisees didn't like Jesus doing unpredictable, non-religious things like hanging out with tax collectors either. But don't you see what Jesus was doing? Watch this now. It's so important. He was just saying, I'll get on your level. I'll come to your house. You don't have to come to mine. I'll come to your house. I'll make this comfortable for you. I'll go to your place because I just want a chance. If I can get you comfortable and I can get you to relax around me, he said, then we can open up a dialogue. We can have a conversation, and then I can tell you about my Father. I want to hear your stories. He said, I may even laugh at a joke. If you tell a good joke, I may even laugh at that. But eventually, you got to let me talk. Right? Eventually, I get to say something, and I'm going to tell you about my Father, and I'm going to tell you how that you can connect with him. And Jesus was saying to us, don't make this more difficult than what it needs to be. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't be so thin-skinned. Keep it simple and reach out to people that are hard and difficult to love, right? Listen to what happened, Matthew 9 and 10. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. Not a few, but many tax collectors and sinners. That was a big party. The worst of the worst came and ate with Jesus and the disciples. Now let me say it again. These are not accidental sinners. Well, we just kind of got carried away. It was an accident. We didn't really mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Not that kind of sinners. These were more descriptive like this. We make a living by scamming people on purpose, and we are couldn't care less type of sinners. We're going to go to hell, so we're going to enjoy life as much as we can now. We don't care about what comes next. We're not worried about that. We're just living in the here and now. That's who tax collectors were in that environment. That's who's at this party, and apparently Jesus was okay with that. I'm pretty sure the disciples were not. They were uncomfortable, but not Jesus. He didn't go into Matthew's house preaching, repent or perish, turn or burn. He just said, let's go to your place, let's hang out, I'll listen to you, but before the party's over, I need you to listen to me. Cool? Listen, if you find the name of Jesus repulsive, then you don't know him. You've been presented with a distorted view of who Jesus is by people that really don't know him either. And if you think there's something about you that's so repulsive to Jesus that he wouldn't have anything to do with you, let me say it again, then you don't know him. You don't know him. And if you believe that because some super spiritual, holier-than-thou Christian led you to believe it, then let me say, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for that. They don't speak for me, and they certainly don't speak for Crosspoint Church. Chances are, if Jesus were to show up here physically again, he'd rather hang out with sinners over the saints. That's where he'd want to be. He's going to engage them in a conversation, in a dialogue, because Jesus is drawn to people who are most unlike him. Let's read verse 11. When the Pharisees, dun, 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 when the Pharisees, now the Pharisees were the religious people. They were the ones who were really trying to live on a high spiritual level. And when the Pharisees saw Jesus hanging out with a big group of tax collectors and sinners, it just totally blew their mind. It confused them. Why? Because they were thinking, wait a minute, if he's from God, then he should like us. Because we're the most super spiritual righteous people on the planet. We've spent our entire lives studying holiness, and we're going to be holy. We cross the T's, we dot the I's. What's Jesus doing with those kind of people? Matthew 9:11, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? In other words, we're confused. Why does Jesus like people that are nothing like him? Plus, we're really confused because it looks like people that are nothing like him too. We don't get it. Verse 12, on hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Now, this could be really offensive had Matthew overheard Jesus say this. Matthew would say, whoa, wait a minute, Jesus, you're saying that me and my friends are sick? Why would you say something like that? So you think you're better than us? Jesus wasn't trying to get that message across. Here's what Jesus says, and he reiterates this 2 more times. Jesus says, let me tell you why I'm here. He said, I'm here for people who in their very, very honest moments, they look in the mirror and they say, nobody else knows this but me, but there's something broke inside here. There's something wrong. I can't figure out what it is. But being honest with me, there's something out of place. Jesus says to us today, he said, I came for the drug addict. I came for the alcoholic. I came for the couple, the couple whose marriage is pulling apart at the seams. I came for the person who'll admit that their relationship with their children is very dysfunctional. Their finances are on life support, and they don't know how that they got in the mess they're in. Jesus said they may be upside down, but I came to reach those people. And Jesus says to the Pharisees, I came not for healthy people, those who think they've got it all figured out, those that's got it all together. He said, I came for sick people, people that know they're sick and they're hurting. Now listen to what he says then, because this is very offensive to them. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. In other words, Jesus said, my priority is mercy and grace. That's my priority. I'm more into redemption. I'm more into rescue than I am a routine. I'm more interested in the people who say, you know, something is not right, and I can't make it right myself, but I feel so torn inside. I'm far more interested, Jesus would say, in those people than I am in you guys who think you've got the world figured out, that think you know everything. And this is how he closes. Do you want to know what Jesus' mission statement is? Here it is right here, okay? This is it. Matthew 9, verse 13. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. That's Jesus' mission statement. I've come to not call the righteous, but sinners. Here's what I want you to hear today, because Jesus has extended an invitation to you, and he does it every single day. He does it every single day, regardless if you've gone to church 45 years or 45 minutes. Every single day, he extends this invitation. Not change, not do better. Don't worry, don't focus on all that stuff first, because there's a process here that Jesus is put in place. He said, don't try harder to be good. Get your life cleaned up and then pray. You know, don't do it that way. He said, you've got the order completely wrong. But simply, Jesus said, would you push your chair back, stand up, and follow me? Would you just follow me for right now and quit worrying about all that other stuff? Listen to me, please. If there's ever a moment as you look into your own heart that you think, you know, it's not right. There's a part of me that's sick, and even though I've tried to get well on my own, I just can't do it. There's something that I can't break free from. Jesus says, I want you to know you are the one that I came for. And I'm extending you this opportunity and this invitation, not to fix yourself, not get better and give me a call. I'm offering you this invitation. Would you be willing to push your chair back, stand up on your feet, and follow me? This is an invitation for those of us who realize that we're sinners. I've spent a little time this week just reading. I found out that when people review our church online, and we'll probably get some bad reviews after this sermon is posted for people to hear. But when people review us online, they tend to tell their story. And they tend to tell how they found us and where they were and how they got here and why that they're here. And I have wept reading stories again this week. And I'd already read most of them one time. And there's been some new ones added, and I just was blown away as people talk about how that they went to college, pushed away from faith during that season of their life, come home and didn't really reconnect and didn't really have a desire to reconnect. And years later, they had their own family, had a couple of kids, and then they realized, you know what, I want my kids to know God. I want them to know faith and to have the opportunity to experience God in the same way that I did. And then they would go on a journey and try to find a church, and said every church that they would go in seemed so judgmental, and it just wasn't the environment that they wanted to raise their children in. And then they'd tell the story of how they ultimately, somebody said, hey, you should try Cross Point. Everybody's welcome over there. And they thought, wow, I'll go give it a shot because I've heard about churches like that before. It just turned out it wasn't true. They said it, but they didn't actually live it out. And then got here and found out, well, doggone, how about that? There's a church there where everybody is actually welcome, and they're going to give you the opportunity to grow in faith, and they're just saying, hey, for right now, why don't you just follow Jesus? Just follow Jesus, and let's see where the journey takes us. Now, here's the thing. I don't know everybody's story and why some of these folks pushed away from faith, but if I were to take a guess, more than likely, my 33 years as a pastor tells me that someone probably led them to believe that living a Christian life is just too hard, and God hates sinners and prefers super spiritual people more. The Christian life is just too complicated. I probably can't do all that stuff anyway, so what's the use of trying? So many people, some even in this room today, cut their connection with God because it seems like an impossible way to try to live your life. And in the little bit of time that I have here today, I'm trying to say as clearly as I know how, no, hold on. If you're a bad person, you're probably the one that He would rather spend time with if He were walking the face of this earth right now. He just wants to get to know you so that He can eventually have a conversation with you, and you can give Him an opportunity to tell His side of the story. So that He can just begin a dialogue. Just bring your sin with you and your habits, and don't try to fix yourself first. Don't try to fix all you. I got some stuff I need to clean up before I start going to church. No, you got it backwards. Come to church and just follow Jesus. And let's see where that takes us. And here's the incredible thing about all this. Now, if those of you that were raised in traditional church like I was, if you're offended by everything I've said so far, I'm fixing to help you out. That's why I asked you to stay. Okay? If you begin to take steps, if you push your chair back and stand up and start following Jesus, let me tell you what's eventually going to happen. You're going to begin to see yourself and the world differently, and you're going to start seeing God differently. That's why Jesus came, to help us connect with God and see Him the way that He really is. Then you'll begin to change, not because you were forced to change, not because somebody gave you a list of do's and don'ts. You're going to begin to embrace a different way of living, not because you have to, but because you want to. You're going to begin to do things differently, not because somebody told you you had to, or they tried to scare the hell out of you. You're going to do it because it's in your heart to do it. And over time, and please don't miss this, because over time, if you keep pursuing Jesus and you find out who He really is, you ever seen somebody and thought, man, I'd really like to get to know them? And the problem is, you got to know them. And you're like, oh, unfriend, that's not, whatever. I want to tell you, it doesn't work like that with Jesus. If you'll quit listening to everybody else's translation of who Jesus is and spend the time to get to know Him yourself, you're never going to unfriend Him. He's always going to be the best friend that you ever have. You're going to realize that greater love has no man than a man that lays down his life for his friends. He will die for you. He died for you, right? Most people wouldn't do that, right? You're going to see things differently. You're going to do things differently. Not because somebody told you it was required, but because your heart is in it and you want to do those things when you realize who Jesus really is. Now, almost done here, but some of you know what I'm talking about. Because you've been coming to church for like 6 months or a year now, and you still have friends that every once in a while they'll look at you and say, man, are you still going to church? I figured that would have wore off by now. And you're like, no, I'm still going. And now it's not because I have to. It's not because Mama told me I better get up and go. It's not because, I have parents all the time that tell me if I don't bring my kids to church on Sunday, they're upset. They want to be in that environment. They want to be there. And there's something in their heart that's changed and connected with seeing Jesus in the way that He really is. And when you see that, you just fall in love with Him. And you want to do it, not because you have to, but because you want to. You're changed because you accepted a simple invitation from Jesus that says, hey, just follow me. Come on, follow me. And I'll take you on an incredible journey. And you'll start doing some things, making better choices, not because you have to, just because you want to. And along the way, you've discovered that God isn't some kind of a cosmic killjoy, not at all. In fact, He's a God that loves to hang out at parties, and He's a God that loves to rub elbows with sinners, and He likes to laugh, and He enjoys being with fun people and all that goes with that. This isn't so hard. And as your pastor, I'm committed to keeping Crosspoint on the road called simple faith. That's the way Jesus did it, and that's the way that we should do it too. God brought you here today so that you could hear Jesus say these words to you right now. Follow me. So Christians that's been around for a while, let me close with this. If your journey of faith has become a burden instead of a blessing, push your chair back. Quit worrying about everything on the table. Just push your chair back again. Stand up and it's simple, just follow Jesus. Fall in love with Jesus all over again. New believers, if you've been hearing things since you made that decision on Easter Sunday and you're a little bit afraid because you've talked to enough people and now you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that. Settle down, okay? Just settle down. Quit worrying about all that theology and all those things, that religious ritual and all that stuff. Just push your chair back, stand up, and follow Jesus. Don't make this more difficult than it is, right? Non-Christians, if you're afraid you can't do this because people have presented an impossible-to-live lifestyle of Christianity, they're wrong, and all you have to do is stand up and follow Jesus. Graduating seniors, once again, if you're considering a break from your faith so that it doesn't infringe upon your 4-year college experience, then your thoughts about faith are wrong. Just follow Jesus. You'll make better choices, no doubt, when you really fall in love with who He is. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And here's the sermon application. When you get out of bed tomorrow morning, before you even start your day, and especially before you walk out the door of your house, just close your eyes and say to God, God, I don't even know what this means, but today I'm going to follow Jesus. That scares me to death, but I'm going to take one step at a time, and I'm going to follow Jesus to see where this journey takes me. Just look at somebody and say, just follow Jesus. Keep it simple, folks. Simple faith. Just follow Jesus. It's the most rewarding experience you could ever have. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Father God, I love you so much. I'm eternally grateful. This beautiful congregation of people that's here today. And I'm asking you, Jesus, would you speak into the hearts and lives of people, Lord, that I guess a little bit torn because they see faith presented one way and they just check the box and go, I can't do that. That's not a life I want to live. And I don't want to be known. I don't want to be identified with those kind of people. Lord, I'm sorry that Christianity is presented in such a negative light today. But help us at Crosspoint, as Crosspointers who are trying to help the world lean into faith, to keep simple faith at the forefront, and to quit worrying about the list of do's and don'ts for the time being, and just focus on Jesus and who He is and what He wants to do in our lives and the person that He wants to make us to be. Lord, not that we have to do anything, but as we grow and as we experience the love of Christ, we're going to start making decisions that we want to make that are better for us to help us live the more abundant life. We give you the praise, the honor, and the glory for it. In Jesus' name, would you stand all over the room?